By the end of my speech, the audience will understand Humer, DeMarfe, and Gooden's reasoning for behind drugs. Humer believes that all drugs should be legalized. DeMarfe thinks that we should just decriminalize drugs, and then on the other side, Gooden thinks that paternalism is the way to go about drugs. Three highly educated people go about what they think about drugs and their legalization or not. Humer believes all drugs should be outlawed because Humer believes that all drugs should not be outlawed because it is our right to do what we want with our body. DeMarfe believes strongly in decriminalization and not legalization. And then on the flip side, Gooden brings up the argument of paternalism, where the government should protect us from doing harm to our bodies. I'll explain each of these arguments in depth, and we'll see which one you side with in the end. With a general idea of what these three guys think, let's dig deeper into it. To start us off, we're going to talk about Humer. He thinks that all drugs should be legalized. He thinks that all drugs should not be outlawed because of the harm the user argument. He doesn't believe in this argument. This argument states drugs are unhealthy to one's body. The government should stop others that intend to harm their body. So therefore, the government should outlaw drug abuse. He also believes that drugs should not be outlawed just because they harm another. The harm to others argument. The government should prohibit activities that harm others. So drugs harm others, therefore drugs should be prohibited. Humer disagrees. He thinks that drug prohibition violates people's rights, and this is called the rights-based argument. One should be able to do whatever he or she likes as long as she does not harm another. Humer agrees with this rights-based argument. He also believes that if paternalism is a thing, paternalism is we should prohibit people from doing things that harm themselves, then we would have to ban excessive drinking, watching television, being overweight, smoking tobacco. So if these things are outlawed, then everything else should be outlawed. And so what he's saying is, these things, excessive drinking, being overweight, since these are not outlawed, then drugs shouldn't be either. Another argument against Humer is the health harm argument. It says that illicit drugs worsens a person's health and increases any risk of death. So if health and the risk of death is an issue, then eating fatty foods, riding motorcycles should be outlawed as well. Another argument against Humer says that drugs makes a worse father, friend, student, worker, and this is the diminished skills argument. The prohibitionist principle says it should be illegal to be a bad father, a bad student, or a campaigner or worker. Humer says no way to this. So now let's dive into what DeMarfe has to say about decriminalization. DeMarfe's decriminalize, don't legalize. He believes that if drugs are legalized, there will be more drug abuse, therefore more drug use. Vice versa. He says if more drugs are available and they're not expensive and they're easy to get, then more people will be available to abuse these drugs. The legalizer believes that the benefits are gang violence, police corruption. All these will cease because there will be no black market for drugs. There will not be as many overdoses as well because drugs would be safer. Theft will be less because the drug trade will not be a thing. And the government can regulate drugs through tax money, and they can also make money while they're regulating. In July of 2001, Portugal decriminalized possession and use of illegal drugs, instead focusing on treatment and prevention, which led which in turn led to reductions in student drug use, prison overcrowding, overdoses, and spread of HIV and AIDS. Drug-induced deaths declined. After 10 years, Portugal has reported a 20% increase in drug treatment and a 60% reduction in drug-related court cases. Decriminalization in favor of treatment did not produce a surge in drug use, which some predicted. From 2001 to 2011, the number of addicts in rehab rose 400%. In that time, drug use has fallen to all-time lows. Is the possibility of addiction incompatible with the value of autonomy? Then this argument goes on to say that very few will become addicts. Addicts, they have the freedom to choose, but they choose drugs because they have nothing more important to look forward to. Next, we'll look at paternalism and what Gooden stands for. He believes strongly in paternalism. And the reason for paternalism is for the government to keep you on the straight path and try to stop you from making choices that could potentially change your life. He argues that there are relevant preferences. For example, no one would choose to become an alcoholic. No one would want that addiction, and no one wants rehab or to lose loved ones. So therefore, in the end, it is your choice to become an alcoholic. But based on these premises, people still choose to drink excessively, but based on irrelevant preferences. So, irrelevant preference would include a surface preference. Say, someone may want to drink because they think it's cool or all their friends are doing it. And the deeper preference for this is that no one wants to be an alcoholic even though they do these things. For Gooden, he believes that these deeper preferences should override the surface. Then we go into the policy implications of Gooden's paternalism. Policymakers can ban the sale of an item, make it more expensive like they already have, ban promotional advertising, and ban it in all public places. So for drinking, that might be kind of hard because there are billboards of Bud Light everywhere, even though people still drink even though they don't want to be an alcoholic or have an addiction. So Gooden believes that we can reduce the corruption that comes with drugs by going by the paternalism argument. In the end, the pro-drugs guy, Humer, posed a great argument for the legalization of all drugs, saying that it is our right to do what we want with our bodies. He says if drugs are illegal because they want us to be safer from harming our bodies, then other things like fatty foods or riding motorcycles should be illegal too. De Marfe believes we should just decriminalize drugs to reduce gang violence and drug violence without having to spend money on our policing. Then Gooden believes strongly in paternalism and everything that stands for it. So, what is the right thing to do morally? De Marfe, decriminalize. De Marfe, it's for the government to try to keep you on a straight path for choices that Gooden's argument.